Oh boy, it's time for that stereotypical small YouTuber does the follow-up video because one video popped off and people were leaving questions talking about what I talked about. And I wanted to provide a few answers and go into a little bit more detail that I didn't go into in the first video. All right, now that we're all on the same page that it's one of those videos, let's move on. So the first big detail that a lot of people were talking about or mentioning that I did not bring up is the fact that in its current form, Recall requires there to be some form of an AI accelerator. In this current state, it is referred to as an NPU, or a neural processing unit, and it's currently only on Copilot Plus PCs, which are the computers that Qualcomm recently announced that drove this announcement. In that they're like it's only accessible on those computers. You're fear mongering, you're misleading people by not mentioning that. So to reply to that first, right off the bat, we'll go ahead and we'll go into the specs and everything that it requires. But I'm pretty sure the point of that video wasn't talking about right now. It was talking about the future. Right now, those are the only computers that have NPUs. In the future, that may not be the case. They may be embedded into your motherboard hardware. They may be dedicated silicon that comes included in your CPU. AMD's already announced that they're doing that. There could be add-in cards that you get. There can be integrations into GPUs. There's a lot of potential for something like this to be a standard moving forward. So I wanted to clear that up real quick. And I also wanted to mention, so this is the article, a few people also mentioned that, like, why are you talking about this now? This is nothing new. Microsoft done that before. Yes, Microsoft has done this before. It wasn't turned on by default. And knowing other Windows 11 and Windows 10 settings, when you turn them off, sometimes after Windows updates, Windows will just turn them back on. So that's a no-no. But I do want to acknowledge the fact that, yes, Timeline did exist before this. But this is not quite the same thing. It is the same concept, but it is executed much differently, much more aggressively. And quite frankly, it being on by default that's the big ticket issue right there. But let's go back and talk about the system requirements. So a lot of people were saying that, like, it requires the NPU, blah, blah, blah. It offloads all of the processing. So it's literally impossible to do this on x86. I know at least one person said that. So first off, obviously that's not true, because every AI large language model that's been designed so far has been trained on GPUs and CPUs. I know for a fact because I have done this. One of my job functions at my last job was we were tasked with creating an AI chatbot for a very particular use case. So yes, I've played with and trained an AI to do these kind of things. I know how they work. And I absolutely did it on my MacBook, which is laying right over there. And I absolutely did not have an NPU in my M1 MacBook because they don't exist for M1 MacBooks. Beyond that, I also made mentions about the system requirements that were a big issue, because in my mind, I was like, oh, they're just going to keep exploding and it's going to create more e-waste in the future and all of those things. Going into that real quick, so this does still require 8 logical processors. So even though it has the NPU, it still requires more processors. So that's going to create more e-waste. I understand that a lot of it is being offloaded to the NPU, and the NPU is able to either do it efficiently, or they were able to utilize the NPU to do it in such a way where the user doesn't notice the performance hit or the battery hit or whatever the case may be. But the case is still that they still need 16 gigabytes of RAM as a minimum. So that's now like your baseline RAM requirement for computers moving forward. It's now going to just be 16 gigabytes of RAM on the low end. You're going to require an 8-core processor. Like, just that is now your base level config for computers. 256 gigabyte storage capacity, that is now going to be your baseline. NVIDIA and Dell, Jensen Huang and Michael Dell did an interview not too long ago, where they're clearly working on some kind of AI acceleration thing as well. There was also like a leak. I think like Dell accidentally posted it on their website or something early. something like that. I don't remember the specifics, so I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to speak too much to that, and so that way I don't cause more issues there. But obviously, this is an industry thing that is being worked on as we speak. It is not going to stay in just these Qualcomm units moving forward. And again, plainly laid out, these are the new base requirements. So all of the computers that were announced that were these Qualcomm, whatever line they call them, Copilot Plus, yeah, Copilot Plus. Let's take a look at those actually real quick. All of these computers, as you'll see, they all have those requirements. They're all going to have 16 or 32 gigabytes. They're all going to have, this one says, they all say up to. These are all kind of lame requirements, but, oh, Dell will actually go up to 64 gigabytes. Are they the only one that does? They also do 2 terabytes. Are they literally the only ones who do that? It looks like it. But only on some models. Like the Inspiron 14 Plus, you can only get a maximum of 16 gigabytes. That's kind of lame. A lot of these are up to 16, like the Acer Swift 14 AI edition, up to 16 gigabytes, up to 1 terabyte SSD. Yeah, some of this kind of sucks. Yeah, it looks like the Dell is the only one that goes up to 64, so I don't know what that's about. But as you can see, these are now the baselines. Let's pick on this Acer Swift 14 because it seems like it's going to be a lower end machine. Oh man, I love websites that do this interface where like the more I scroll with my mouse wheel, it like gradually steps in the page. That's definitely not frustrating when I'm trying to find information. Okay, well this doesn't really look like a budget computer like I thought it was going to be. It's got Wi-Fi 7. It's got apparently a 1440p webcam. It's got an IR camera, so that's cool. 2.5K resolution. I'm not quite sure what that means. It's probably, what, 2880 by 1820 or whatever that resolution ends up being. 75 watt-hour battery capacity. 30% power efficiency over Apple M2 Max. Number 4. All right, what's that? CPU peak performance is based on the geometric mean of 100 runs with 60 seconds in between runs utilizing Geekbench 6.2.1 in October 2023. Qualcomm Orion was tested on using a Qualcomm laptop reference design running Linux OS. Build kernel 6.5.0 RC1 Debian Trixie. M2 Max was tested. Blah, blah, blah. Nobody cares. That's a fun little blurb that I just learned. That ties into this video. Because obviously, Qualcomm isn't... They're not great open source champions. There were a few people who talked about this too. I would love to see Qualcomm support Linux for this kind of thing. I'd love for there to be an open platform to do NPU development on. Because with a neural accelerator like that, like I might actually get into doing more neural net stuff because like that stuff has always been interesting to me. I love the idea of neural nets. I just hate that they're being marketed the way that they are, and this AI thing is all marketing. It's not a general AI. It's not a GAN. It is... I see this text. All of these tokens in a row means that these tokens will historically come after it. Therefore, that's the output I'm going to go for, and they go for it. That's another philosophical debate that a lot of people were, I think, are just not familiar with, not aware of, and that could be a video in and of itself. So I'm not going to get into it too much here. But yeah, it's safe to say that this is the precursor. This is the new baseline. Computers nowadays will be built with these features. It's like 3D TVs for the stint of, what was it, 28 to 2011, 2012 maybe. Like if you wanted to buy a TV, you bought one that had 3D. Like there was no way to avoid it. Or it's like smart TVs nowadays where like it's basically impossible to get a not smart TV. Like this is the new standard. Hopefully it dies out and it doesn't continue, but like this is going to be our reality for at least the next few years. And of course the big thing was, well, if they're already violating your privacy with all the telemetry and everything, blah blah blah, why do you only care now? I'm like, well, I have cared. This is not my first Linux experience. I guess I should probably provide my credentials since I didn't do that in the last video. My previous job, I was a Linux systems engineer. I worked on a fleet of 2,500 Linux virtual machines, doing daily maintenance tasks, spinning up new instances for our dev infrastructure, helping deploy new applications, the aforementioned chat program that was written, cybersecurity, like all of that. Like that's what I do. Linux is my wheelhouse. I'm to steal a line from Metal Gear Solid, where Meryl has that Silver Desert Eagle in her hand, and she's like talking to Snake like, oh yeah, no, I've been holding this gun since I was a small child. I'm more comfortable with it than I am a bra. That's how I feel about Linux. I'm more comfortable with Linux than I am anything else. I could, except for when I'm extremely tired now to practice, apparently, because I fucked up the ending of the last video. I can navigate my way around on command line practically blindfolded at this point. So it's not a matter of, oh, you're not going to make it, which I also got a few of those comments too. That's fine. You're going to come whining back. You're just whining for views. All this stuff. No, I promise you, this was just the final straw that I needed. The only thing that was keeping me on Windows was literally playing Call of Duty, and I haven't even played much of Call of Duty because Modern Warfare 3 sucks. But I really love the Infinity Ward games, 2019 and Modern Warfare 2. I've spent hundreds of hours in, if not thousands at this point, and I love those games. Sorry, I know they're trashy entertainment and people love to hate it, but I have fun playing the game. Sue me. So I don't know what I'm going to do about that, but this is what it took to be like, you know what, maybe I just don't play Call of Duty anymore. Maybe I just never play Rainbow Six anymore. I already stopped playing Valorant because they're anti-cheat. I already stopped playing other games because they're anti-cheat. So anyway, going back to the privacy thing real quick. So Microsoft did come out and say that there will be some things that you can do for privacy for Windows Recall. Again, I feel the need to remind people that my complaints were not about like the current state of affairs. Yes, you can turn it off now. I'm thinking 2, 3, 5, 10, 15, 30, 45, 100 years into the future. What does this look like? How is this going to affect society as a whole? I made several comments about that with like my son growing up around this stuff. Like, what world is he going to experience? There are a few people who are like, oh my God, you sound like a 90-year-old man yelling at kids to get off their lawn. And I'm not going to discount that. That's absolutely some of what was going on. But I feel like with most, I'm trying to be very careful with my wording here. I feel like most people who are known for just yelling, get off my lawn, you damn kids, with your heathen music, never took the time to actually understand what it was that they were mad about. As I've said, I have experience with it. I know how they work, and that's why I don't like them. I've done my research, and I have actual reasons for not liking them. I don't just not like it because it's new. Same thing with TikTok. I referenced TikTok in the last video. It runs a Java virtual machine on your computer that then tries to obfuscate what it's doing. Any piece of software that is actively... take a step back. It also has tamper protection to where whenever it notices that you're trying to decrypt and deobfuscate the virtual machine, it will just kill itself and stop running, and so that way you can't see what the code is doing. So that's one reason why I don't do TikTok, because they are actively trying to hide what they're doing. And if they're actively trying to hide what they're doing, it's probably not a good thing in the first place. And even if it ends up being innocent and it's just business defense or whatever, that's fine. I'm making the conscious choice to go, well, I don't want that on my computer. Like, pure and simple. If you want to do that, that's fine. You're allowed to do that. I am merely stating my opinions. Anyway, real quick, I'm going to take a sip of my, definitely milk. Definitely not banana cream, crema. That's alcoholic. Definitely wouldn't be doing that on camera. Definitely wouldn't have also added some Fireball to it to make it spicy. So there was a lot of, hey, you can pause it, you can turn it off, you can blacklist websites, you can, like, all the stuff that you can do, like, just turn it off, haha. Which, again, 2, 3, 5, 10, 15 years, you may not be able to turn it off. Microsoft already has a history of this with some things like Windows updates. You can't disable Windows updates anymore. They've rolled a lot of that back because of how bad it was in Windows 10, but you still can't completely stop applying updates. They will force you at some point to install the updates. going beyond that, the Xbox underlying subsystem of Windows 10 and Windows 11, that system runs at a higher privilege level than your user does, even when your user is running as admin. So if you ever want to manually delete files that, like, let's say you install a game on your C drive and you're like, nah, I don't want that game anymore, I want to delete it, you straight up can't. Like, Windows will not let you delete it. You do not have the right permissions. You cannot acquire permissions. It will actively block you. So this is, again, a system that already exists and is used already. So clearly they're going to take that expertise and make it work on Copilot, and they already are, because I'm willing to bet that that system is going to be the basis for this encrypted partition that is going to store all the snapshot data. So right now you can turn that off, but in the future you may not be able to, and there is already a demonstrated use case of this doing exactly what I said I didn't like about it. So that's a problem. So Recall does give you the ability to filter out specific websites. It also will recognize whenever you go into incognito mode. There's certain browsers that it natively supports. Chrome, Firefox, Opera was called out, Microsoft Edge, obviously. And then I think they just said all Chromium browsers past that. So they have like some basic implementation if your browser isn't supported. So that hits all the main targets. That's fine and dandy. It won't record anything you do in private mode, so nobody will see your porn theoretically. And they also don't. They give you the ability to blacklist rather certain websites, so that way, whenever you go to your bank, for example, it won't take any snapshots. Fine, that's all good stuff. That's all things that need to exist. I'm not discrediting them from existing. This is all really important stuff. The issue is the other stuff. Like, there's nothing in here mentioned about how whenever you are looking at your password manager, for example, it will still take that photo. So imagine like a thief steals your laptop and like you don't have a good password on it, because quite frankly, you and I might have a good password, but the people who will be using this feature, statistically speaking, will not have good passwords. They will have password 1. They will just have it automatically sign in. They will have 1, 2, 3, 4 as their PIN code, and so on and so forth. So all somebody has to do is steal your computer, log into the computer, and then they can eventually scrub through and find a screenshot that has you entering some credentials somewhere, which was, again, the point that I was upset about. And the reason why I know this will happen is this little line right here. Note that Recall does not perform content moderation. It will not hide information such as passwords or financial account numbers. The data may be in snapshots that are stored on your device, especially when sites do not follow standard internet protocols like cloaking password entry. They are literally telling you on this page that that will happen. That's why I'm upset about it. And the big one, snapshot, content stays local. Obviously, this is just kind of nebulous and up in the air. I believe that eventually they will come out with some kind of synchronization framework where it's like, oh, now you can port your Copilot data from your old computer to your new computer, or hey, you can access it on your cell phone or whatever. Again, that's where the problem lies. The problem will lie where it eventually will not just be processed on your device, or there will be some kind of security update where it's like, hey, there's some kind of exploit. What we're going to start doing is we're going to start processing certain data in the cloud, so that way all of your sensitive information isn't stored on the machine anymore and it's secure so nobody can steal it. Or it'll, be, hey, there's a big battery life hit. We're going to start processing the cloud. Well, whatever the justification is, it will happen. Now, if we're lucky and there's enough public outcry, because given the last few days, there's a ton of public outcry about this, so I'm hoping that plays out in some meaningful way. But assuming that, like everything else that Microsoft has done on the Microsoft operating system, assuming that all that plays out the way that they want it to, because most people don't give a shit, then yeah, it's going to happen eventually. And this is going to become an absolute security nightmare. Here's another point that I wanted to add about the in the future kind of thing. So all Copilot Plus PCs will be secured core PCs. This feature is the highest security standard for Windows 11 devices to be included on consumer PCs. For more information, see secured core PCs. They also say Microsoft Pluton security processor will be included by default in Copilot Plus PCs. So then you can also see Microsoft Pluton. So secured core basically is hardware crypto, to break it down in a very, 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 very basic summary. I'm not going to get into the details here because we'll be here for another hour. But basically, there's a hardware root of trust, which involves TPM 2.0, and then there's security checking with secure boot, blah, blah, blah. This is a lot of the same things that the Xbox does, in all honesty. So it's kind of cool to see that they're porting that security model over from the Xbox to Windows computers. It's cool from a security standpoint. I hate it from a user perspective because Surface devices, for example, already kind of have a difficult time booting another operating system. You sometimes have to like jailbreak them. It's not a real jailbreak, but it is finding some form of exploit that will allow you to run your own unsigned code in some circumstances. We might hit a point within the next 10, 15 years where some PCs, some actual PCs, are going to be locked to their source operating system. They're going to be locked to Windows 11. There's nothing you can do about it unless you can jailbreak them. Which, that to me is a fundamental issue. I want to be able to run whatever code I want to. If I want to be able to download the UEFI NES emulator and play Super Mario by booting it directly like I would my operating system, that's my goddamn given right as a consumer buying this piece of hardware. Like, the way things are structured right now, we don't even buy the hardware. We're renting the hardware, basically. But again, that's a whole nother philosophical conversation. But it does tie into why I'm so upset about all this, because this is just another thing that's being slowly sliced and whittled away. So here's another interesting one that I really, really, really want to talk about, is the Microsoft Pluton security coprocessor. Because they say that it's a requirement, or at least that it will... it's included by default in Copilot Plus PCs. So included by default doesn't necessarily mean that every computer will ship with it. There's probably some kind of certification thing that they have to go through, but Microsoft is going to start pushing for this in all future devices. And I read this first line. Microsoft Pluton security processor is a chip-to-cloud security technology built with zero trust principles at the core. Microsoft Pluton provides hardware-based root of trust, secure identity, secure attestation, cryptographic services. Pluton technology is a combination of a secure subsystem, which is part of an SoC, and Microsoft-authored software that runs on this integrated secure subsystem. So what the hell does all that mean? Basically, it's just like iOS, where they have their secure enclave. It's code that only it runs, and it's very locked down and trusted and guarded and blah, blah, blah. This thing is also kind of a security nightmare, just in the same regard that the secure enclave philosophically is one. This is also a philosophical security nightmare. It's very similar to the Intel Management Engine or the AMD PSP, or even in... Again, cell phones. Did you know that all cell phones, the way that the radio works for these things is they are completely separate operating systems that run independently on a chip that you have no control over and have full system access in a lot of cases. So if somebody compromises the Intel Management Engine or compromises the radio, they actually have more access than they could compromising the actual operating system on the device. And that's not theoretical. There are exploits out in the wild for the Intel Management Engine that does that. For a lot of government agencies, one of the requirements is they have to be able to completely disable Intel ME because of those kind of exploits. Same thing with the radio firmware. Very, very, very famously recently, I want to say about a year ago now, the Samsung radios that are in their Exynos processors, those had a massive security flaw in the same way. So basically what we're doing is we're just taking the problem, and while we're putting a lot more attention into the core of the issue and trying to solve it, at the end of the day, putting all of your security functions in something like this is a much higher risk. Apple has proved that it can be done fairly successfully. They haven't really had any system-wide secure enclave issues that are, massive and widespread and super easy and blah, blah, blah. They're all very high level and very technical. Same thing with Samsung Knox. That uses a lot of the same ideology. There are a few exploits that work for that, but they're very fiddly. They're very technical. They require hands-on access and such. So they're not like a widespread exploit like Intel ME has. But I just think it's an interesting concept that now they're starting to include these chips on all computers that are being sent out. So if that's the case, then we are moving into a realm where computers are going to start to become locked down, and they're only able to run proprietary, specific, Microsoft-blessed software. And that's what I have a problem with on the freedom front. If I'm only allowed to run Microsoft software because Microsoft is the only person who's allowed to decide what I put on my computer, that's not freedom. I would like to be able to install Linux. I'd like to, again, use my earlier joke. I'd like to be able to boot the UEFI NES emulator and just play Mario directly on my hardware without an operating system even running. Like, that's things that I should be allowed to do as a consumer with the thing that I purchased. But anyway, so yeah, that was the kind of general vibe of a lot of the comments going through. A lot of it was people just talking about, oh, well, I wanted to learn Linux anyway. Or, hey, remember when Microsoft said Windows 10 would be the last version of Windows? Well, it was for me, and comments to that like. And for all of you people who were willing to have the discussion and willing to actually understand the angle I was coming at, I'm very thankful for you and the conversation that you created in the comments. It was wonderful reading all of these different stories of people about how, yeah, this is the final straw. I finally did it. And there were several people who actually, as of that video, finally said this is it and installed Linux. And there are other people who are in the same situation I was, where it's like, well, we've used Linux for a very, very, very long time. And now is the point where it's like, you know what, I'm done. And not to say that I'm ungrateful for all of the other comments. Absolutely, I'm grateful for all of them. I love the discussion. As you can see, I've went through and I've responded to a lot of these comments. I haven't responded to every single one because it was a lot. We're almost at 600. I think we're a little over 600 now as of me making this video. But a lot of the comments were really good, and I do really enjoy the discussion. And I'm looking forward to having more discussions with you guys and seeing where your thought processes is. Hopefully this was a good summarized way to kind of answer a lot of the pain points that people had with why I was upset. And hopefully it gave a little bit more context to why I was upset. And hopefully with all this information, if you're still on the fence about this, or if you still don't really understand why, well, now you can start to see that picture and understand why. And yeah, hopefully things work out for everybody. Hopefully, like, my best case scenario is that Microsoft goes, shit, we fucked up, we're not doing this, and then they just scrap the whole project tomorrow. Probably not going to happen, but like, I would love to be that level of wrong about all my predictions, because Microsoft just said, abandoned ship. That would be awesome. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be what happens here. So with all that said, though, I do appreciate all the comments. Please keep them coming in. We had a few people join the Discord, and we've had some good conversations there, too. So, yeah, if you have any questions about Linux, feel free to join the Discord. That'll be in the description. And we can shitpost about Linux and make fun of ourselves about installing web browsers and everything else that goes on. Final thing that I want to say before I end this video, because so many people were asking so many questions about, well, like, I really want to leave Microsoft now. What do I do? My next video eventually will be a complete beginner's guide to, okay, I want to leave Microsoft and I want to install Linux. What do I do? I'm currently writing the script. I'm like 4,000 words in, and I'm only like on chapter 4 out of 12. So it's going to be, I'm trying my best to keep it super detailed for like the absolute beginner. And we're going to run through, we're going to explain everything. It's going to be chapterized. And hopefully this will be the escape guide that everybody needs. So stay tuned for that. Other than that, I'll see you guys around. Thank you.